Hey, it's November 11th, 2019. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm doing a review on my three Cobra machines that I have. I currently own a Cobra Class 20 flatbed sewing machine, a Class 3 heavy-duty stitcher, and a Class 14 leather splitter. I've owned the Class 20 for about 2.5 years now. I've owned the Class 3 for almost 2 years and the Class 14 for almost 1 year, not quite. All three machines arrived the same way from the Leather Machine Company in Ontario, California. They arrived on a pallet. It's delivered by a shipping company. It gets shipped as freight, and it costs anywhere from about $200 to $300 for me to ship it from California to Omaha. The price would definitely vary depending on where you live in the United States. And if you live abroad, I'm sure they can ship it to you, but I can't even begin to figure out how much that would actually cost. All the machines come well protected on these pallets. They're strapped down. The machines themselves are inside these cardboard boxes encased in foam. These are the parts to the Class 3 that I received. That's the bobbin winder, and as well as the hand wheel and the belts. But I just open the boxes by opening the bottom, and then I just lift the box up off of it because these machines are very heavy. They weigh, once it's all assembled, they weigh a couple 100 pounds. So picking them up out of the box by the top would not work. I also moved all of these machines into my basement at the beginning of this year, and I only have about 8 or 9 steps that they needed to come down, but it required me to disassemble all three machines. My wife and I initially attempted to pick up the Class 20 and try to carry it down step by step, and it became quickly apparent that we would not be able to even budge that machine. But they're not that difficult to take apart or put back together, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But some of the bigger machines, like the Class 4 and the King Cobra, I would assume are much, much heavier than these machines because their pedestals are bigger and the machine itself is bigger. They're all made out of cast iron. They have to be in order to withstand all the pressure that they have to exert on the needles in order to stitch through thick pieces of leather or any other type of material that you want to use in order to complete your projects. The Class 14 splitter is also completely cast iron and very heavy. These are the oiling ports on top of the Class 3. All their machines have these oiling ports, and they're all indicated by they're all indicated by these red dots. You just drop a couple drops down there, and you're good to go. This is the DC servo motor. That's the way you can change the speed of the motor. It's very simple, and once it's set at the desired speed, whether it's fast or slow, it stays at that speed regardless of how far you push the foot pedal down. I really like these machines. I probably did leathercraft for about 4 years before I actually pulled the trigger and bought my first sewing machine. I will say that if I were to do this again, I know I've said this before, but I would definitely go with buying a splitter before I buy my sewing machines. If you're really good at hand sewing leather and you're thinking about pulling the trigger on a power machine of some kind, I would highly recommend getting the splitter over the sewing machines just because the splitter is the game changer. That's what's going to allow you to stock one weight of leather, and you're going to be able to split it down to whatever side or whatever thickness that you need for your projects. And if you're going through a project and realize that you need a thinner weight, you just run it through the splitter and there you go, versus having to either try to skive it down by hand or having to contact a leather supplier and order more leather at a different weight. But The machine does a great job being consistent with the splits, and there's nothing wrong with hand sewing leather. In fact, it's actually superior to a sewing machine in that saddle stitch has a knot on each stitch, so it's not going to come apart like a lock stitch could. However, a lock stitch that the sewing machines use is still plenty strong. I've never seen one come apart, so I don't think that's that much of an issue. Another thing with these machines is they're very good for doing large projects like belts and these radio straps where there's a lot of stitching involved. It would take just hours and hours to stitch these projects by hand. However, they will leave presser foot marks in the leather. There's no way around it. That's just the way it is. You can try and reduce the presser foot pressure. However, a certain amount of force is needed with the foot to press down and keep the project in place while the needle comes down, because there's a lot of force that's needed in order to push through these thick pieces of leather. So another thing I want to point out is these machines are not magic. They will destroy your project if you're not careful with it. You can't get a light-duty machine and a heavy-duty machine all in one. With leather machines and industrial sewing machines, period, it's either it's light to medium duty or it's heavy duty, one or the other, because the light machines can't make it through the very thick leather, and the heavy machines will tear up thin projects. So that's why you see a lot of people who do leathercraft and have machines. They'll have one set up for their light duty stuff, their wallets, their notebook covers, things like that. And then they'll have another one for gun holsters, knife sheaths, belts, saddles, what have you. And the other thing is the heavier stitcher machines have a higher height that the presser foot can go up to in order to fit the thicker projects down into. Versus the light machines, the presser foot will only come up so high. And my class 20 says that it's able to handle up to a half an inch of material. And I totally believe that the machine could easily stitch through half an inch of material. However, when you try to put that much underneath it, especially when you come up to a turn, you realize you have no play when you raise the foot. The foot's already up as far as it can go. And if you try to make a turn on that, you're going to start dropping loops out the bottom of your project. So, but like I said, hand sewing is great if you're good at it. Get the splitter first and then save up for a sewing machine later on if you like. There's some projects like this shotgun shell pouch that I'm making here that you really can't get the foot of a sewing machine down like around these shotgun shells here. I'm sure it can be done, but it'd be quite difficult versus just punching some holes and stitching it in by hand. It doesn't take that long, and it turns out just as nice, I think. Something else I want to point out is safety with these machines. They are power tools, and they are very dangerous if you screw around with them or use them the way they're not intended to be used for. Both that class 20 and class 3 machine would easily sew straight through your hand or your finger. I've used them enough, and I know exactly how they operate. It's just like using a saw. You know, you have a carpenter that works every day with the tools they use, and they understand how they work and what they need to accomplish with that tool. Same thing with these sewing machines. You'll quickly learn exactly how they operate and what you can safely do with them and what you shouldn't be doing with them. But also the Class 14 splitter has a giant 14-inch, basically it's a giant razor blade inside it. It's extremely sharp, and if you were to get your fingers caught in those rollers somehow, it would suck your hand right in there and it would slice your hand in half. Could be a very dangerous machine if used improperly. Definitely don't want to have children around it while it's plugged in, or probably around it, period. And you just got to be very mindful when you're using it. I haven't had any close calls with it or anything, but you'll see me do some maintenance here on this Class 14 splitter. I do have to remove the blade for about once a month to strop it, and you get an idea of how heavy that blade is and how sharp it is. The blade's 14 inches long, but you only get 13 inches of cutting surface, and I say only 13 inches. That's plenty for the average leather worker. Unless you're making huge briefcases or something like that, I can't foresee any reason why you would need a piece bigger than that. On the other hand, a lot of the other splitters that are available on the market, one is a hand cranked version. I've mentioned it before. I don't think I'll mention the company's name here just because I don't have any first-hand experience with it, but it only has an 8-inch blade, and I don't think that would be enough for like a holster maker or somebody who's trying to cut down a piece, kind of like that piece I just had up right here. You're trying to cut this down. You want some extra room on either side of it if you're trying to make, say, a lining piece for a gun holster. And you get plenty with this Cobra Class 14, but I don't think that 8-inch blade on that other machine would be sufficient. There's also some other smaller splitters, but they're also hand cranked, but they are pretty much made to cut down straps. And then you also have your little skivers that Tandy sells. I have one. You've seen me use it several times, but really it's only good up to about 1.5 inches for a strap, and it's really made to skive down the ends of straps in order to put a taper on them so you can put a buckle or a snap on it. But I stuck a piece of tape on my machine here. Right now, the rollers are open as wide as they can go on the handles on the left-hand side. And as you move it over to the right, the rollers close up, which would cause the machine to split the leather down thinner and thinner. The further to the right you go, the thinner the leather gets. But really the only maintenance on this machine is oiling the red oil ports on it and stropping the blade every now and then. I also have to say that the Class 14 was the easiest out of the 3 machines I have to assemble. It's pretty basic. You can also get a hand cranked version of this from the Leather Machine Company. However, I don't know if I'd recommend getting a hand cranked version. It's only a little bit more to get the motorized version, but the motorized version allows you to have both hands free to hold your materials versus holding it with one hand and then trying to crank it with the other. About a year ago, I made a video about the prices of industrial sewing machines and leather machine products. And that is because it was projected that due to, the tariffs in China and all that business, the prices on these machines was going to shoot up. They remained pretty consistent all summer long. They didn't change at all. However, I saw somebody make a comment online a few days ago that said that the price of the machines was all of a sudden going up. So I went and checked, and sure enough, every single supplier, including the Leather Machine Company's website, showed that the machines had all gone up in price. Now, if you think you're going to go out and find one of these machines used, I say good luck. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm sure they are out there if you tried, but you're probably going to have to go do some traveling in order to get the machine. Once people get these machines, they usually hang on to them, and they're just going up in value right now. I remember the first time I ever saw this Class 14 leather splitter online and thought it was the coolest machine I'd ever seen. And since then, from that point till today, I would say that the price on this machine has gone up almost $1,000. So if you're going to pull the trigger on buying one of these machines, I'd suggest doing it now because there's no telling how much more expensive they're going to get. Um, I will say I ordered the Class 20 from the Leather Machine Company directly. I ordered the Class 3 from the Springfield Leather Company. They're a Cobra dealer. And then I ordered the Class 14 from American Leather Works out of Lansing, Kansas. He's also a Cobra dealer. And he had, the American Leather Works actually has the best prices on these machines. And I checked on his website, and he is still his prices have gone up since I made that last video about his company, and I did the screenshots of his website with the prices. Like I said, that was the prices as of that date, and they're subject to change at any time, and they have gone up. However, he's still Eric down there in Kansas. He still has the best prices on these machines. So if you're looking to get one, you can order it from him just like you'd order it from any other distributor, including the Leather Machine Company. So you might as well save yourself a few $100s. It might be $100 or $200, but I mean, like I said, that could be your shipping right there, depending on where you live in the country. There I am changing out the blade to the splitter. There's 3 set screws that hold the blade in place. There's 3 adjustment screws directly behind it for a total of 6 screws. And then there's 2 brackets on either side that are held down with a Allen head bolt. So it's pretty easy to take the blade out, strop it, and put it back in. And Al Bain has a really good video. He and representative from the Leather Machine Company showed how to adjust the blade. Doesn't even take 5 minutes, so don't be intimidated at all about taking the blade out, stropping it, and putting it back in the machine. Like I said, these machines all come from China, and if you're wondering if there is an American-made alternative out there, I have yet to find it. I believe Juki, Adler, Cobra, Cowboy, all those companies, even Sailrite, I believe all their machines are made in China now. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just the way it is. Do I wish that there was a U.S.-made version alternative? Yes, I do, but I don't know what that would possibly be. Maybe the Campbell Randall awl machine. It's got a stitching awl and needle combination. I believe that might be still made in the United States, but number one, I'm sure it's very, very expensive, and number two, it looks like an enormous industrial machine that would not be appropriate for anything that I'd be doing. It's made for straight up horse saddles and stuff like that. Now this is my Class 20 flatbed sewing machine. This is the first industrial sewing machine I ever bought, and I love this machine. It has a DC servo motor on it, and it just crawls if I have to go slow. And it has this large table, so larger projects like this giant folder I made, there's plenty of support for it to hold your material while you're sewing. Also, this machine has the ability to be used for upholstery work. I haven't upholstered anything in a long time, and I'm talking 20 years ago. I recovered the seat in my brother's pickup, and I used an old Consew 206 RB5 clutch machine, and it was a very similar setup to this other than the servo motor. And I'll tell you that the servo motor is so much nicer to use than a clutch machine. Clutch machines just either they're full blast or they're at a stop, So I would definitely say that the servo motor is worth its weight in gold. These are just some of the thinner projects I've made. This machine's very easy to thread, and you don't have to make a whole lot of adjustments in order to change your needle size or change your thread tension, depending on if your material thickness has changed or the type of material that you're stitching together has changed. The other thing I really like about this machine is that it's got a top feed bobbin. It just feeds in the top like that, and you can just slide that plate over and check to see how much thread you have left in your bobbin. I think all the other sewing machines that Cobra offers, as well as like the Conso sewing machines and stuff like that, I believe the bobbin case is all located underneath the machine, so you can't just slide the little plate over and see how much thread you have left in the bobbin. But this machine, I mean, if you're doing, even thick belts, this machine would be great. I would not recommend this machine or like the Class 26 for like gun holsters or knife sheaths. The foot, you just don't have the clearance with the presser foot, and you're going to be much happier with either the Class 3 or Class 4 stitcher. Now we're getting to my Class 3 stitcher, and out of the 3 machines I own, this is my favorite to operate. Like I said, I love my Class 14 splitter, but this thing is just so much fun to run. I actually look forward to using it anytime I can. As you can see, the presser foot has so much lift on it. I mean, any type of project you have will fit underneath this presser foot, and it's going to have plenty of power to sew through it. This machine has a 9-inch cylinder bed on it, and I know some people have said, well, I'm going to have to go with I want the bigger machines because for the just in case factor if I need more clearance. And that might be an issue for some people. I've had this machine for almost 2 years. I've never had any issues with being able to complete a project because I couldn't fit it on the my right hand side of the machine. And like I said, it's got a 9-inch cylinder bed on it before you get to the throat, which is the back side of the machine, and to keep that in perspective, I guess, a lot of saddle makers use that. I know I mentioned it before, that Campbell Randall awl and needle machine. It also has a 9-inch throat on it, and they are selling saddle fenders and all those types of things on it, and they have no problem. There's also a video of a saddle maker up in Canada, and he's using a Tippmann Boss, which has like a 6-inch throat on it, and he's sewing the shirling onto the backside of his saddle fenders with it, and he's doing just fine. So if you're doing just knife sheaths, gun holsters, or thick gun belts, or firefighter shields, I would recommend the Class 3 over the Class 4, the King Cobra. I think that those machines just might be a little overkill. But then again, you have to answer that question of what machine is right for you. I'm saying that this machine works perfect for me, and I highly recommend it. The other thing I'll mention about this machine is it's the out of the heavy stitchers that Cobra offers, this is the bottom of the price point. It's the exact same machine as the Class 4, and the King Cobra is just the cylinder bed is shorter on it, but it also helps me with the amount of room I have down here in the basement. It's kind of an issue with any type of machine purchase I'd make is the amount of room I have to place them. And this machine just tucks right back against the wall out of the way and works perfect. So highly recommend it. Anyway, the point I'm at with my leathercraft hobby, I don't plan on buying any other machines right now. I'm quite content with these 3. Highly recommend all 3 of them. If you have any questions, let me know. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska. Have a nice day.